How you feeling? How you feeling this week?
Why do you put the spotlight on me right away?
Because I'm the first one to talk, and what am I supposed to say? But how are you? Or you just want to jump right in?
I do.
Okay, listen. So this week, one of the guests is Daniel Bernard Roumain. He's collaborating with the Norfolk Chamber Orchestra over at Yale University. He wrote a piece of music in honor of Diamond and Dae'Anna, who were, the widows, I should say. Diamond was the girlfriend, and Dae'Anna was the stepdaughter of Philando Castile. Now, I don't like that this needs to be this needs to be the downbeat this week, but honestly, in doing my research and preparing for the conversation, I came across this and had never seen it before.
You hadn't?
No, well, let's for the folks who so this is Diamond and Dae'Anna in the back of a police car after the police murdered Philando Castile a few years ago.
Mom, please stop saying cousins and screaming because I don't want you to get shielded.
Okay, give me a kiss. My phone just died, that's all.
I can keep you safe.
It's okay, I got it, okay?
It's like the police just got done shooting somebody and they're in the back of the police car.
Right.
Anyway, we don't have to listen to all of this. I'm going to put it in the description. What do you think repeating it here did? Do you think that had some sort of specific impact, just repeating that footage over and over again here in Minnesota? Because like I said, I had never seen this. I had never seen this footage before.
You mean TV stations?
Right,
Or
news and all that.
why would they want that to be seen?
Well, what impact do you think it had? Because I am looking at this for the first time. For the people who were seeing this looped on the news,
Yeah, I saw
what
it
do
a
you
lot.
think? What do you think was the hoped for impact of this trauma, this child trauma porn?
The only thing I can think of is to keep it in the forefront, to keep it in front of mind.
No reason. I mean, she was probably 4 years old there. Mm-hmm. No reason for a 4-year-old to have a context on getting shooted, as she says. That is horrifying to me. Telling her mom to calm down because she doesn't want her mom to get shot. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with.
It is.
Oh my goodness. So anyway, we're going to be getting into that in the third movement today, but I just wanted to bring that up. I'll have it in the description again, as I said, because that is traumatic footage. It's footage that I think is important to see. When I think about that little girl, I think about the better world that us grown folks need to work to build for her. And for little girls like her, if she grows up and decides wants to play an instrument, to be a musician, I feel like it's up to us to make this worth a damn for her. You know what I mean?
Sure.
When I think about triloquy, that's one of the things I think about.
You mean like the world you leave behind?
Exactly.
The one that you hand off.
Or create the ecosystem we create
Right.
for the next generation
Yeah, I see
coming
what you're
into
saying.
it all. Mm-hmm. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm Garrett McQueen,
I'm Scott Blankenship.
and this is Triloquy. You have any announcements or anything this week before we get into this first movement?
I don't, but I do have a couple accidentals. I think we should hop to it.
Sure. Well, I'll just quickly say I owe a couple thanks for this week. First of all, huge thanks to the ICE organization, the ICE Ensemble. They're doing ensemble evolution, really having conversations to completely restructure what we think about when we think about ensembles, even when we think about music and what is music. So I had a great time collaborating there last week. I think I saw Katie on the roster as well. So shout out
Oh,
to
yeah?
Katie over at Classically Black. And I want to thank everyone over at Meg Quigley. They recently, they're supporters and recently published a conversation that Titus and I had about three songs, works based on spirituals by William Grant Still. And you know, when both Titus and myself are in the same space is dope. So shout out to Titus. I'll have that linked as well. But yeah, I think that does it for my announcements this week. So let's get into movement one. Have a few naturals after last week. Do you have any naturals you want to do?
You weren't italicized last week too, were you?
What do you mean, like a little tipsy? No,
No, a couple opuses ago, you said I was a little italicized.
I was in
last time.
italics.
Actually, I think I was in italics and you were in bold.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Well, the first natural, first of all, I didn't thank anybody. Thank you for being here, y'all. This is Triloquy. New listeners, thank you so much. Welcome. Returning listeners, always great to have you. Okay. So, my first natural here, and for folks who don't know, when we throw a natural on something, that's just kind of fixing or adjusting something that we were talking about last week. So last week's guest was Babatunde Akimboboye, very much a baritone. I clocked him as a tenor, but I just want to make sure I put some respect on that. But also, Scott, I've sent you a little DM. There was a little drama concerning that interview. So apparently, when Babatunde was going in and talking about folks climbing the ranks and destroying organized efforts down at the bottom, especially of Black people, Babatunde must have been talking about someone in particular. I know that person's name now because it's been told to me. I'm not going to repeat it here or nothing because I don't know him personally. But all I want to say about that is if something on this podcast hits your spirit, that's that, because I wasn't leading him to talk about this particular person.
Oh, you weren't.
I didn't even
you were
know
trying
the
to
person.
coax information out of him. You
No,
weren't
we were
trying
just
to.
talking. We were talking about that issue. And for folks who weren't here last week, the issue that we were talking about again was folks who rise the ranks in certain industries, specifically opera. They've made their spot in the limelight and in the opera house or whatever. So they want to just sort of rustle up organized efforts to challenge those things. As a concept, I know that exists. If there's a specific person that applies to and you felt like somebody was talking about you, it sounds like you need to change your ways, not worry about what I'm trying to do on my little podcast. So anyway, that gets a natural. I also want to throw out a quick natural. I said that my friend Emil was a part of the Minnesota Orchestra. Emil plays violin with the Minnesota Opera. So shout out to the Minnesota Opera. I want to make sure I get all that right. I was saying a lot of music words last week, getting mixed up a little bit. And also, I couldn't remember what record label that Randall Goosby had signed to. I said it was one of the classical labels. Well, it actually ended up being Decca.
Right.
And there's actually a bit of news coming out about Randall Goosby and everything that he's got going on. There's a New York Times article here. It says, for a major debut, a young violinist gets personal. I'm going to scroll down here because there was one little paragraph that I thought was something. This article is probably Josh Barone. Yep, article by Joshua Barone. It says, a debut recording has to express the signature of the artist. And that's exactly what this is, from someone who is a perfect advocate as a performer, but also a perfect advocate as a communicator of what this music means, said Dominic Fief, the director of Decca. It's always exciting to see young artists which are right at the beginning of the runway. So again, Randall Goosby, a Black violinist originally from Memphis, 901, everybody stand up down there. Really pushing or being pushed out there as this new hotshot in violin. I think it's kind of cool to see a black hotshot violinist, someone that I feel like I've had a connection with. I saw him perform live at Sphinx a few years back. I mentioned I'm happy for him. There are some. I would love to sit down with Randall.
Yeah.
So if Randall's management, if you're listening right now, send me an email at triloquy@gmail.com. I think we could get into some things.
We played his music just last week.
Yeah, we played a movement, and one of the what we played last week actually is on his new album Roots that I recommend everybody go get. I think it's a pretty good album, and it's not every day I'm up here talking about a violin album or even listening to a violin album on my own time.
That's
So.
true.
So definitely go get that. We heard a movement from the Suite for Piano and Violin by William Grant Still last week, African Dancer. This week, I want to give a little room to Randall Goosby's performance of music by Coleridge-Taylor Perkinson. We were saying Coleridge-Taylor Percocet. Coleridge-Taylor Perkinson. This tune is called Blues Form. It's a 3-movement tune. I really like this first movement, and what I appreciate most about this is the intonation that Randall plays with. You have to really get those double and triple stops exactly right to make sure it sounds good, and then he's sliding on them. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit of this. Shout out to Randall Goosby, signed with Decca. Remember when we saw Molly Mayer at the Hook and Ladder before in the before four? I think that sound that we just heard from Randall Goosby would fit into that sort of space. If you get Randall and with the right kind of band, the right kind of collaborators that understand,
Sure.
his vibe enough to really fit in. I don't know. I think there would be something there.
That sounded sultry to me.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounded sort of sexy, like the red light challenge.
And the silhouette challenge. And the problem is, I feel like I feel like we just jumped right in this week. The problem is that sort of sound and that sort of technique, I think, is still other. That's still the so-called extended technique, as we've already talked about. I don't know if many people, I'll say, are really learning how to do that sort of thing in school. If these teachers at these conservatories are equipped and trained to teach that sort of sultriness. A couple weeks back when Rachel Barton Pine was on, and she was talking about playing violin in that way, she talked about how she improvised with the blues folks in her communities, and she
Right.
went out to the jams, and so that was her training there. I wonder where Randall was getting all that from. It sounds good. Again, it's a sort of intonation that I haven't heard in a little minute. I've been indoors, so
Right. No, I enjoy that sound, and I think you're right that it should be just a technique rather than an extended technique. There's a place for it.
What would be, so I imagine at your job, this album, this music is going to be coming through. That music we just heard, that Coleridge-Taylor Perkinson, that blues form. What would be your sort of break for that? How would you introduce a listener to what they're about to hear, or create some context around this new sort of violin sound?
Maybe compare and contrast what you would expect to hear at that point in time and say, no, instead we're going to go like down to the blues bar. But maybe I think talking about those extended techniques just as techniques, say, listen to the way he hits the double stops, or the way that he's sliding up and down into these notes. That's mimicking some of the blues technique, isn't it?
Very fluid, very sexy and sultry, as
Yeah.
you say. I'll give Randall a sharp while we're here.
Sharpen the headphones, I'm telling you.
Well, did we not check the levels before? Did we not? Anyway, okay. So those are the naturals and things. So this is coming out on the last day of Black Music Month and Pride Month. So we have a little Pride accidental. So let's send a sharp for Pride. First of all,
Yeah.
you wanted to talk about Bianca Page. Take it away.
Go down to Tennessee. The Nashville Mayor John Cooper has made a first. You know, we talk about Titus and how he's ready for some boring stories.
Who is living in Nashville.
Right. So okay,
he's going to drive
here's
down
another
Bianca
first.
Page Avenue.
He's going to walk down Bianca Page Way. It is the first street named after a drag queen in the United States. And in a tweet, Mayor John Cooper called Bianca Page a Nashville legend. He said, "This is the first street in America named after a drag performer." So congratulations to Bianca Page.
Do you have any fun drag stories from when you were at the drag show?
Not from the drag show because
Go ahead.
because I haven't been to one.
Ever?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, you super straight.
Well, I guess. But I was in a play called At Breakneck Speed where one of my co-stars' friends was a very flamboyant gay man.
In the play or in real life?
Both.
Oh,
so
okay.
it worked out.
Amen.
Yeah. So and he was in drag as sort of the older characters, you know, like a Barbara Bush,
Sure,
sort of a
sure.
thing.
Mrs. Doubtfire
And
tease.
right, and he would get ready at home and then drive to the theater. And once he got pulled over by the cops, and he made him turn his car off, and it was like 100 degrees outside, and all of this Barbara Bush makeup is just sort of sliding down his face.
She should have did it in the dressing room at the theater.
I don't know. I don't know why that happened that way, but the way he told the story, we were rolling on the floor laughing.
When the Knoxville Symphony, back when I was down there, when we would do the Nutcracker, they would try to get a local celebrity involved on the stage in some way. So in Knoxville, you know, I worked at a public radio station, and then there was another public radio station that was more, I hate to say pop, like not quite the current, but a public radio station that was into the bluegrass and the more contemporary country-esque things. Anyway, their main host was the Drosselmeyer one year, the magical uncle or whatever. And he said he was in all of his makeup. This isn't even drag. This is just evil uncle makeup for the Nutcracker. Went to Subway or something. And he said he got to the counter and the cashier was like, "You are so brave and I support you." People are crazy, but at least it wasn't the opposite because it also could have been bad. It also could have been bad.
It could have, but thank you for that laugh, boy. That was necessary. that was good.
But also Subway, I don't know. Unless Subway wants to write me a check, I don't trust Subway.
Over in Ireland, they say that you can't even call the Irish government has said to Subway, you can't call your bread bread. There's so much sugar in there that isn't even bread anymore.
But would you not eat there? Do you still eat there?
I haven't had a Subway sandwich in I don't know how long.
I mean, I don't know how we got on Subway. Anyway, so shout out to Bianca Page Avenue.
Bianca Page Way.
I'll have to read more about that article. It sounds like Bianca Page has passed on. That's what this is in honor of.
Well, I can still say congratulations.
Yeah, of course.
So.
No, yeah, but I'm saying I just need to learn.
Oh, yeah,
I just
sure.
need to learn more. Okay, sticking with our little pride sharps here for this last day. Oh, I didn't mean that. There we go. But I want to throw another sharp out to Lil Nas X. Now, I know you didn't watch the BET Awards, but you're on Twitter. Did you see anything?
I did.
What do you think? Okay, so folks who don't know, Lil Nas X last night, this is Monday, last night at the BET Awards, did a performance to his new song, Call Me By Your Name, you know, the music video, Stripper Pole Down the Hill, Satan Lap Dance, all that. So for the live performance, he gave like an Egyptian sort of, thing, and even had an homage to the Remember the Time video, the Michael Jackson, and I did some of that choreography anyway, and went up there and was tongue kissing a young man. Two young men tongue kissing on the BET Awards. I never thought I'd see the day. And maybe it's insignificant to you, but for me, in my 34 years gay, I never thought, I'm seeing that stuff.
Back the truck up.
Back the truck up. Okay, what you need?
What about me makes you think that it's no big deal to me.
Because you're not gay, and so like maybe that sort of stuff isn't significant to you or something. You don't think. Excuse me for assuming. Talk to me about how this was such a heartwarming moment for you.
I'm sorry. I don't really have any strong feelings about it.
See,
I don't feel scandalized. I don't feel like it was forced on me. I don't care that I was in theater for much of my life. I don't care that same-sex people kiss.
But this is why it's a thing, because I have to watch straight couples kiss on TV all on every other channel, right?
Do you feel scandalized by it?
I don't feel scandalized. I feel like, why are we making a scandal out of this? That's all
Agreed.
I'm saying. And P. Diddy congratulated him for being himself and pushing through, and folks are trying to clown P. Diddy now for his support. I don't know. The homophobia is so fucking lame. I'm sorry. Let me give a flat to all the homophobes out there. Homophobia is like an outdated hate. I mean, because it seems like everybody knows somebody gay.
Sure.
Even if you don't know, you know somebody gay.
Right.
And that's the other bit of tea. But basically, that we all have that connection. There are white gay folks, black gay folks. There are queer people in every identity and in every corner of society. So if we're just gonna, I don't know. I just needed to shout out Lil Nas X and name that y'all are losers on the internet trying to say something about this or make it a scandal or make it or whatever.
Agreed. You got too much time on your hands.
Anyway, my last little pride sharp goes to Queen Latifah. She got a Lifetime Achievement Award at the BET Awards. We've talked about Queen Latifah on this podcast
A couple
before,
times. Oh, yeah.
and she deserves all of the things as far as I'm concerned. Queen Latifah can rap. She can act. She's been in Living Single and so many other things. She's different types of roles, because Khadijah James is very different than whatever her character's name was on Set It Off, which was very different. She was in Chicago. I never saw it, but
she had a prominent role in one of my favorite films called it's with Maggie Gyllenhaal and Will Ferrell. Stranger Than Fiction. She's got a major part.
Oh, I don't even think I know that movie at all.
Oh, it's a really good film, and she plays like an industry sort. Not an industry sort, but she works for a publisher, and her job is to get people to hit deadlines.
Yeah. Last night at the BET Awards, she shouted out her partner, told everybody Happy Pride. So I think it's cool that we're seeing this. And I know, again, you talk about being in theater and there's plenty gays in theater, but I have not always seen that sort of thing on TV, that sort of affirmation on TV. And maybe I pay more attention to it as a gay man, but I think it's quite significant. And there's a whole generation, all these Gen Zers
they don't even think twice about it.
They don't even bat an eye.
I think we're seeing a shift both on that front, on sexuality being more overt. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. You said you haven't watched cable news in like 3 weeks.
They talking about gay sex on CNN?
No. I'm talking about the sheer number of F-bombs they're letting off the chain. Like when they show
FUCK.
Oh yeah. And they are full on. Like Jim Acosta said that Tucker Carlson got the Bullshitter of the Week award. And said it. Bullshit. I mean, they're just letting it fly now.
Well, they were saying shithole country on TV.
Right. But they were trying to, they would censor some of that. But ever since they started showing video of the insurrection on January 6th, and, there was loads of vulgarity being used in those videos.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know what the fines are, but I think we may be seeing a shift, don't you think?
When
are we going to be the new prudes?
Dell and I talk about that all the time, especially, again, when it comes to the queer spectrum. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be old-fashioned to want to be in dichotomous, monogamous relationships? Mm-hmm. I was talking with one of my homegirls over the weekend, and we were talking about relationship anarchists, people whose a part of their sexual identity is anti-relationship, and then all of the other sorts of nuances there. I think I think we are going to be old fashioned at some point, but I just hope that I'm not fighting for the like that's the problem. Like is one thing to like have a belief or come from a culture, but when you're pushing back to for other folks' inability to not change. Another term I've been hearing, we're going through the gay terms or the queer terms, is like homo agitator or trans agitator. So the idea that, okay, these people aren't afraid of trans people, they aren't afraid of gay people, they just like to agitate, they just don't want them to live in peace. So that's a word
Interesting.
that I'm hearing. So don't be a homo agitator or trans agitator. Anyway, okay, shout out to Pride Month. Pride here in Minnesota is in July. It's not even in Pride Month, I heard. And then Black Pride, which I will definitely be at, is in August, when I guess that's when it'll be 1,000 degrees here. Who knows?
Of course.
Shout out to everybody in Portland. If you're listening from Portland, I'm sending my thoughts to you. I'm going to say a chant for you because I know y'all having a rough time. No air.
Seattle's up like at 110.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
they were
crazy.
talking about Portland, a high of 117. I don't know if I've been in 117 degrees.
That's hot in Texas.
And think about all the pets. Like, you got to bring your please bring your dogs in and all,
No doubt.
do all that. Ooh, child. Anyway, so much stuff going on. Well, to get us into our next accidental, since we were giving Queen Latifah her flowers, I thought we would check out some of the classical music that she's performed. So back in, let me read this. She has an album called the Dana Owens album. That's her, that's her government. Dana Owens.
Oh.
So I guess this is Queen Latifah just coming out as herself. I'm going to go through all of these tracks on my own time, but the one I thought I would share here today is called Simply Beautiful, because Queen Latifah is just that, right? Simply beautiful. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
If I gave you my love, I tell you what I do, I'd expect a whole lot of love out of you.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely
Another
gonna spend
sultry
some more
one.
time with that. Oh my goodness! I mean, do you hear the richness of her voice? Queen Latifah deserves all the things. For the new people, again, just in case, on this podcast, what we do is challenge the notion of that phrase, classical music. All countries, not just Western Europe, all countries have a classical music that they affirm and press forward. You don't have to argue with anybody in Mexico about mariachi. You don't have to argue with Nirmal and them about the vina. You don't have to, so all these examples I always give. In the United States alone is where we argue about what our classical music is. We want our classical music to be European classical music, but we have our classical music. Excuse me, we have the Negro spiritual, we have blues, we have jazz, and what I hear coming out of Queen Latifah in this recording is American classical music, period.
Didn't you say you had a friend over in Scotland that said that they don't even different? It's just music?
My homegirl in my home person in Scotland, shout out to Simone, said that there is the traditional path,
Right.
and
Okay,
then
that's it.
the classical path.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna have Simone on because black folks in Scotland, that's the thing. And then I was hearing stories about how Scotland actually bought Frederick Douglass's freedom. And Frederick Douglass was talking about the only music that he thinks comes close to the beauty and the power of the Negro spiritual is the traditional Scottish song. So all of this stuff makes me curious. I wonder what kind of food they eat over there. What is Scottish fare? Is that the bangers and mash and stuff? I don't want to get mixed up with the Irish. Y'all will be
Haggis.
after me. Haggis?
Haggis.
What is haggis?
Traditionally, it's a sheep or goat stomach stuffed with barley and and it's
Stuff with barley.
Yeah,
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I'll try. I'll try. Anyway, shout out to Queen Latifah. Shout out to everyone in Scotland as well.
I would like to be in on that interview because I went through my traditional Celtic phase too.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah.
You have kilts and everything?
No kilts, but I did run around with a group that was known as the Irish Mob. So
Okay, so are we talking about Scottish or Irish?
I can talk about Scottish too.
Okay, anyway, go ahead and you have an accidental here for this first movement.
Yeah, I'd like to give a a sharp to
Sorry.
the artist BLKBOK, and that's BLKBOK.
Yeah.
And he is a classically trained pianist and composer, but he's also been playing quite a bit with pop stars. And in the article that you share, there's a picture of him playing in Atlantic City with Rihanna, so that gives you an idea.
Oh, that's Rihanna.
The caliber of people that he's playing with. But he is also a big advocate of the use of classical instruments in hip hop and rap. And he said that, we've already seen he said the music industry must remain conscious of the new classical hip hop movement to maximize its potential. The first wave of classical cover versions of contemporary pop songs was last year, and now a second opportunity is emerging as demand grows for music that evokes deep emotion. And I was going to ask you if the BET Awards had that same orchestral instruments being used on stage.
Not as much as I remember from years past. I don't know if you remember, close to the beginning of season 2 of Triloquy, we had the pleasure of having Stephanie Matthews on. She's performed at the BET Awards. She actually performed on the Mary J. Blige tribute, which was dope. They did honor one violinist at the BET Awards. I'm sorry that I'm not remembering his name, but I think this is interesting. What's catching my attention, what I don't want to pass over, is the very first sentence of this article. This comes from Forbes, again, how Detroit piano prodigy BLKBOK is inspiring classical musicians. It says neoclassical pianist and composer BLKBOK. Okay, so we're already just using terminology just all willy-nilly. I'm not saying we have to focus on the Stravinsky and the Schoenberg of it all with neoclassical, but I wonder if that's a phrase that we might see more of, neoclassical, so-called neoclassical.
It's interesting that you point that out because I didn't register that when I started reading the article.
Yeah.
I didn't even pay attention to that. But what I did pay attention to was further down when he says, when people see me, they expect me to start rapping. And they're not 100% wrong. He says, I am a rapper, except I spit lyrics and tell my stories through my hands, these notes. So I don't know. Maybe that comment canceled out the neoclassical thing. Do you think that it's a misnomer, that that's not accurate?
I think, I don't know. I think it's a good term, but the music nerds, the music history geeks, the colonized education people like me are just going to think about neoclassical and think about early 20th century Western classical. But I don't know. Now, more that I talk about it here, I think that's a pretty good term.
But his new release is it has a twofold inspiration. It's called BLKBOK, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, and Green Book, the dramedy film, the biographical dramedy film Green Book. And there's one track in particular that speaks to our time. Obviously, it's called George Floyd and the struggle for equality. And he has beaten the hell out of this piano for this track.
Well, let's listen to it a little bit. This is what I think about. What more do people want? Because he just played all of those keys, and it sounds beautiful. As a matter of fact, the very first note reminded me of something that I'll think about as soon as we cut off the mics, but that bum, ding, 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 whatever concerto that is. I don't know if it's the Grieg or whoever, but the chops are there. So all of the Western, all of the very in the box chops that people are looking for are obviously there with this artist, and we have a problem. I don't know if we have a problem, but this is still. We can't say that this is not pushed into the margins. We can't say that we're hearing this on the stage yet, and that, well, maybe those sorts of sounds, but I don't know. I'm going to pay attention to this artist because I hadn't heard of Black Bach before, but if I don't know. We've had the conversation about if classical music is going to survive X, Y, and Z. But as soon as we talk about so-called classical music dying, you talk about how you've seen that conversation for decades, and
Since I
here we
started.
are,
Yep.
and here we are. Did when you let's flip it over to the hip hop side real quick. I don't know if I've ever asked you this when hip hop was first coming, when you were a youngster. Did you feel like it would stay? Would you have been able to predict that it was the world power as far as music that it is today?
No, I wouldn't have predicted that. No, but of course, I was there for breakdancing, and that lasted what?
How was that?
That lasted
I would
2 or
love to-
3
I would
years.
love to see.
That lasted 2 or 3 years, right? The breakdancing crew,
Okay.
Electric Boogaloo, the Breakdancing 2 film.
The refrigerator boxes and
All
the
that.
jumpsuits
All
and
that,
all
sure.
that. They were doing that in Omaha?
Of course.
Okay.
Come on now. Come on.
I've never been to Omaha. I don't know.
Okay. It's a little bit more cosmopolitan than you're giving us credit for. But to me, music was very segregated where I was growing up, you know, because when when I hung out with the people that were in my neighborhood, it was Led Zeppelin, Molly Hatchet, Ozzy Osbourne, all those rock bands. Now you go over to the other side of town where there were the more yuppie kids.
Sure.
And that's where I was getting the British bands, New Order, the Smiths, things like that.
Okay.
And then of course you go to the North End and it's
The homies.
Right. So you've got that's where people were listening to NWA and Public Enemy, Bobby Brown, you know, those sorts of bands. So to me, it was very easy to get siloed.
Yeah. They were listening to NWA and Bobby Brown, period. I love that. Support all black music.
They did.
When you talk about musical genres being segregated, I think that's an important point to highlight, because these days, again, as we're talking about with Black Bach, the fusion of these things, we talk about fusion all over the place between different genres, that segregation is beginning to disappear and the racism is jumping out. Malcolm X famously said there is only racism where there is a threat. You know, when Beyonce sang at the CMT, Embodied, oh, they had a problem,
Sure.
you know, and they were with the Chicks. I think they were the Dixie Chicks still
Right.
at that point. But,
Right.
but I think that's some of what we're seeing here as these 808s, as these untraditional, so-called untraditional sounds and aesthetics and techniques. You know, again, we're wiping away the idea of extended techniques, but just techniques, as all these things creep into or try to creep into the classical spaces, is going to be all sorts of reasons why this is not that, and we have to build this wall, and we have to gatekeep this way. I think that segregation of music that we all experience, you know, I'm thinking, we were talking about Queen Latifah, you know, I'm thinking about the early 90s. The black folks in Memphis listened to the black stations, and in a mostly black city like Memphis, there's the old school R&B, there's the top 40 rap, there's the rap. I'm trying here not to curse, but there's all, you know, there's the gospel. So that's just what we listen to. But again, as this is all meshing and melding, it's changing into something different. We're seeing a lot of, actually, you know, speaking of the BET Awards, Lil Baby, okay, again, not the baby, Lil Baby performed his song with Kirk Franklin. So we're seeing the meshing, the melding of hip hop, rap, and gospel. And that's not an issue. We're not up in arms about that, but different types of fusions are, you know, all of this to say, this is my long way of saying, the day that classical programmers for the stage, for radio, conservatories, the day is coming when we all just have to face the fact that you don't like those black sounds in the room. And 808 is not dangerous, but they're not going to have an 808 on your radio station anytime soon, or any other. I won't say any other classical radio station, but most of the other ones. And the reason, well, I don't know. I'll just say I feel like the reason is that black, what maybe they'll say urban sound, because it's not the rhythm. It's not the rhythm of these beats, because if you put that rhythm on a marimba or whatever's in the back of the orchestra back there in this contemporary piece of music by fill in the blank contemporary composer, it's okay. But as soon as it's a drum machine, we have a problem.
To be honest with you, after reading that article and then listening to the album, I was surprised that a
It's
drum
not
machine
so-
didn't come in.
yeah.
No, it's pretty straight ahead, neoclassical, classical-esque.
I guess the other thing to really note about this is if you have those chops and you are open to what's on the outside, if you're open to breaking down those barriers, you too can be on the stage with Rihanna. Tell me what I got to do to perform with Beyonce.
Hell yeah.
What scales do I need to practice? Just let me call Lady Jess,
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. We have in this first movement one more accidental. It gets a flat, but let's just go ahead and warn the people.
Color problematic.
I'm just gonna read a little bit. This is and actually, Scott, since we've come over, or since you came over, the apology video came out. So
Oh, did it?
yeah, or the article. So for
I
folks,
was going to say I saw the article, but video.
well, let's let the folks know what we're talking about. So, violinist Pinchas Zuckerman did a master class at Juilliard and was in there wilding, just thinking he could just say any old thing. Juilliard decided not to publish the master class, and now, as we're seeing here, published literally as we're sitting here, the headline from the New York Times is "Violinist Apologizes for Culturally Insensitive Remarks About Asians." I'm gonna read just a little bit so folks know what's going on. A masterclass by the renowned violinist Pinchas Zuckerman was supposed to be the highlight of a recent virtual symposium hosted by the Juilliard School. Instead, Zuckerman angered many of the roughly 100 students and teachers in the class on Friday when he invoked racist stereotypes about Asians, leading Juilliard to decide not to share a video of his masterclass afterward with participants as it had initially intended. At one point, Zuckerman told a pair of students of Asian descent that their playing was too perfect and that they needed to add soy sauce, according to two participants in the class. At another point, in trying to encourage the students to play more lyrically, he said he understood that people in Korea and Japan do not sing, participants said. His comments were reported earlier by violinist.com, a music site. All right, Scott, what? I mean, nothing's going to happen to him. That's what I tweeted. I retweeted the article and said he is going to be fine, and that bothers me. What are people going to do? What should be the action? We talk about how cancel culture isn't a real thing or whatever, but there has to be something. There has to be some therapy or something, like just finding whatever is in him that needs to change, that needs to be dealt with, so this doesn't happen again. An apology published by the New York Times doesn't mean a goddamn thing to me. Excuse me. It doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't mean anything. I hate to see what he say about the blacks. Put some hot sauce on it. Put some watermelon or chicken on it. I don't know. You can't put it past him. Talking about soy, add some soy sauce.
I did.
I'm tired.
I did get to interview him once, and
oh really?
I thought that I would start the interview fun and on a light note, and I said,
and it got problematic.
I said, "Have you heard any good viola jokes?" And he was not amused. And it took me about 5 or 10 minutes to dig my way out of that hole and get the
Pinchas Zuckerman plays viola.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I asked him if he heard it, and he says, "Oh, I don't like that."
Oh, he don't like that.
No,
but you can talk about soy sauce.
And he also believed that, everything need to be played exactly as it was on the page. He got pretty animated about that. Was the artistic director for the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra for a number of years.
And no more?
And no, he's not anymore. And but that was ages ago. It was
that
like
was before we got here. Okay.
late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, that
I think,
long
something
ago.
Like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and he sort of raised the profile a little bit. But like a lot of the artists out there, I heard grumblings of not, kind of unsavory behavior. Part of Pincus's image is a certain swagger, a certain air of confidence that he puts out there too. So I did not expect an apology to come out.
Oh, really?
No, I figured that he would just go, well, I said what I said.
Well, he apologized, which don't mean nothing, but I guess you have to be on record for that.
Probably.
What do we need to? The other part of the conversation I want to have is the white folks who are in the room. Y'all didn't say nothing? If Pinka Zuckerman come in here and say something about some hot sauce or some fried chicken, what are you going to do? That's what I need to know.
That's a great question. I would probably get up and leave.
And not even fight him or nothing? No, I can fight my own battles.
Yeah. But like we've talked about before, that's not necessarily my nature.
Sure. I don't know. I just think we need to be more active about that part of the conversation as well. Okay, somebody is talking some bullshit in a master class or something. Who is going to stand up and put Pinka Zuckerman in his place?
Indeed, who?
It needs to be that.
Who? Indeed.
I'd be there with my finger all in his face talking about.
To this day.
I'll find a reason to bring up. Well, based on whatever problematic thing he says, that is, an opportunity. I don't know. I know they say kill them with kindness and turn the other cheek. I'm not saying fight nobody, get physical in these masterclass in these spaces, but you just can't let it ride. You need to stop the pressure.
You're just talking
right
about
there.
You're talking about calling it out
In the moment. Like stop the masterclass. Everybody put your instruments down, put your bow down. You are out of line.
Okay, so you said, what is it going to take? It's going to take getting this story wider distribution. Because just for a goof, while you were talking there, I went on my phone and called up a couple different public news and music outlets, and I have not seen this story out yet.
The apology?
I haven't even seen the story about the masterclass being canceled. It's not getting attention in the very venue that it is in.
Well, I have a very active Twitter timeline. Shout out to all of my followers because that's how I learned about this sort of news. And I don't know. Thoughts and prayers to everybody at Juilliard. Pinka Zuckerman, I hope your E string pops, okay?
Oh, damn.
Well, obviously, we aren't going to listen to Pinka Zuckerman we're doing accident. Yeah, we're done with the accidents. We aren't going to listen to Pinka Zuckerman, but there's another tune that I want to listen to. So, again, in the second movement, we talk about how we've been taking the second repeats and, what we're repeating over and over again. All month, I've had an honorable mention. I let my YouTube music or whatever just go about a month ago, just play some stuff. And this song that I didn't know by Deniece Williams, it's called Free. It came up. And after I heard it, I just kept repeating and repeating. I put a little flute rendition of it on YouTube. So let's listen to just a bit of this to transition us into the second movement so we can talk about how we took the second ending this week. You don't know this song at all?
I don't.
I didn't know it either. I want to let the beat drop, though. Hear all those orchestral instruments, chimes, and things.
It wants to remind me of Donna Summer.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. There's even a live Soul Train performance of this. Here goes the beat. This is my part.
I need my roller skates.
Yeah. I keep pushing that button, by the way. I meant to fade that, y'all. Anyway, Deniece Williams, Free, a really cool tune. I've been repeating and repeating and repeating that. And when I'm again, when I'm in my moods, when I'm in my angry mood, not my depressed moods, but my angry moods, that has been a song that has, you know, got me just calmed down a little bit. She's singing about being me. She's singing about being free, and it has a nice little groove to it. That nice black classical groove to it. I love it. So shout out to Deniece Williams. But we're here in the second movement officially, where we are taking the second ending and revisiting some of the tunes that we had on repeat this last week. All right, Scott. So for Black Music Month, we've been covering a lot of different types of black music. We've gotten a little bit into the gospel this month. Obviously, we get into the hip hop, the Western classical. Again, shout out to Randall Goosby and all those folks. I've returned to the Marsalis violin concerto, the Wynton
right?
Marsalis. I've been listening to that.
Cool.
Well, and I'll update all this on the Trickle Tracks playlist I'm behind. But the one place we didn't get, Scott, was black country. And I know we've had that conversation before, but when we talk about equity and really making sure that we're keeping our spaces as diverse as possible, the classical American tradition of country music is one that black people have always been involved with and are still involved with. So I wanted to make sure before the end of Black Music Month, I gave a little room to something I heard recently. You ready for this?
Yeah.
This is a bop for me, okay? I'm not even going to say anything about it. I just want to get your straight up opinion.
If she get a shot of whiskey, she know how to throw it back. She turn up for Elvis Presley, told the DJ throw it back. She look better every Thursday, she don't have to throw it back. Shouty got me catching feelings, I just hope she
Now watch the beat drop.
throw it back. Drop it low, you can blame it on the jack. Slow it down, girl, I'm trying to make it last. If you sexy and you know it, make it clap. Throw it back.
And the song is featuring Keith Urban. So shout out to Keith Urban as well. Okay, this is my question. Is that a country song? Is that a song that you would consider a country song?
Did he lose his truck? Did his dog run away?
And that is a new hit single. The artist, if y'all don't know, his name is Breland,
don't know.
Breland. Throw It Back, featuring Keith Urban, is it says here June, so it's a new single. But Breland, I just did a little digging, has a whole album, and one of them is "Don't Touch My Truck."
Okay.
So
Okay.
there are definitely those, more, I hate to say rural because that's not what
Sure.
it is, but just that the country sort of
I
thing.
I feel like I have to stand up for country. I think this is
here we
new.
go.
I think this is new country.
Here we go with all the subgenres.
I'm hip. But no, what I'm talking about, when you say country, I think George Jones, Patsy Cline,
Okay.
Waylon, Willie.
Sure.
Those names. That's country.
Dolly.
And then, what is on the radio now? It's pop with a violin to me.
I don't know what channel the country music on.
Do we have one? We have to have
I
one.
wouldn't know.
Okay.
I don't listen to the radio in the car.
That's true. Yep.
But yeah, I've been turning back to Breland. One of my things is, again, as we're talking about, the melding and the desegregation of genre. I think I might start using that phrase, the desegregation of genre. More of these mixes at the fringe are happening. I know, shout out to everybody down in Knoxville, the Cotton Eye Joe in Memphis. It's not a club anymore, but Denim and Diamonds. So all of these country western bars that have the line dancing, that has all that stuff, but will throw in a little blackness because the black people are there too. This is that vibe. And I don't think this is not country. I'm not about to argue with somebody about whether this is country. I know CMT and them probably will not accept it, but I hear that country twang in the voice. I hear the guitars. I hear all of those things, and it happens to have a little beat on it. So what? So fucking what? That's my thing. So I just wanted to make sure we gave some room to Breland, especially if we're going to talk about the the beats and stuff on classical. This is fine too, and this is still country. As I said, the American classical tradition of country music.
What do you think pop music is going to sound like when you and I are on our deathbeds?
ain't no telling. Do you remember? I'm gonna find it real quick. Do you remember that episode of Rick and Morty where Jerry is in the simulation and he turns on the radio and the aliens don't quite know what to do, so they just do human music?
Right. Beep, boop, beep.
I think it's a trap. Somebody is gonna do this.
Yeah.
Hold on, is it gonna play? Oh, I'm on mute.
And now here's human music.
Human music. I like it.
You are not going to tell me that there is not a new music, and this is no shade, a new music composer, experimental music person, somebody that would not turn that in.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
I used to ask myself, I wonder how long I could get this off. Like when I was on the radio, I was like, I wonder if I just played this, how long before the police showed up? Anyway, so shout out to Breland, Throw It Back, featuring Keith Urban.
That was good fun.
I kept taking the second ending on that this week. I'm going to keep listening to it. What you want to talk about music-wise?
Since this is the last opportunity that we get to officially observe Black Music History Month, I want to throw out just an amazing voice. And the reason why I say that is because when I hear this from a lot of people, but when I first heard this artist, I did not know where to catalog this voice. Male or female, don't know. Old, young, don't know. Black, white, don't know. It's just such a unique voice. And when you want to talk about littles, he was actually, when he was popular in the 1940s and 1950s, he was known as Little Jimmy Scott.
Oh, come on, Little Jimmy.
Because he was 4'11", and he had just this amazing way of phrasing, and his whole timbre was so unique. And I was doing the overnight shift at KVNO, doing jazz on the weekends. And I was playing his music at about 3:30, 4:45 in the morning. And I watched,
really?
Yeah, and I watched 4 blobs sort of rise up out of the sidewalk and creep away. And I went and looked at it later, and there was a drain pipe there that 4 raccoons came up and out of. But with his voice playing and watching that happen, it created this sort of eeriness, this otherworldly aesthetic.
Let's listen to a little so the people know what you're talking about here. That bass is heavy today.
This was used in the soundtrack to the David Lynch film Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah, here go Jimmy.
You take me for a walk under the sycamore tree, the dark tree.
There is definitely an androgyny around the voice.
I think so too.
I even hate to use that phrase. One of the things I was getting into this weekend, so the Black Opera Alliance had a queerness and blackness sort of summit. So just a discussion group. We're getting together, just talking about different things. And something that I had never thought about that I want to spend more time with. Are you familiar with the Fach system? I think, they say Fach, F-A-C-H.
I don't think so.
Basically, that's the system under which singers are categorized. A mezzo-soprano, a lyric soprano, a opera buffa, or that's probably not one. But anyway, so in those categories, so for each one of those voice types in that Fach system are the roles. So if you want to be Pamina off a magic flute, that's in this one. If you want to be Zarastro, that's all under this one. And one of the things that's coming up is that there are men who sing very high
Sure.
and women who sing relatively low, who can sing the repertoire outside of their fach, but they don't have access to that literature. Their teachers don't really push it forward. And when you really break it down, we're getting into gender, because a man should not be Carmen. A woman should not be Figaro, and that sort of thing. I mean, I could see a woman Figaro. That sounds dope to me. The women hairstylists out there, and
Sure.
and even the male Carmen, the seductor or whatever. So when we get into how gender and how all of these, rigid things really limit the art. And, I don't know. I was thinking about all of that as we were listening to Jimmy Scott here, because I'm sure there are types of songs that
Sure.
people would not expect to hear him sing based on
Well,
being a man.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because he had success all the way up to the early 1960s, and then sort of, started to fall out of favor or fall out of vogue. And he worked as a porter in a hotel for many, many years, and he had a resurgence. As you can see, this is a 2011 track when he was working with David Lynch on that Twin Peaks film. I couldn't have picked a better song than he did at that point. But when he came back and had a little resurgence, he did covers of Nothing Compares to You by Prince, as done by Sinead O'Connor.
Yep.
Holding Back the Years, which was Simply Red track on Broadway, is on here as well. So yeah, I would never have expected his voice in a song like Nothing Compares to You. We listened to a little bit.
Yeah.
Totally different track.
Yeah, most definitely. I wonder how many porters, how many busboys, servers, how many whatever are out there that could not have the musical career that they could have because their voice doesn't match all of these rigid norms that we build. There have to be countless. There have to be countless. Maybe even some in our periphery. Some
Sure.
folks that we see that are phenomenal musicians, but we'll never know because some motherfucker wants to say, well, your voice is a little high, or
Sure.
your voice is a little anyway.
But even you said, "Oh, look at him! I didn't think he would look like that."
Yeah, I mean, based on
What you hear.
based on our conversation, I was like, okay, well, this is a man with a very unique, beautiful voice. I guess I didn't expect the man to be older. Like I expected. I heard a younger voice, and
That's what
maybe
I'm-
that's my own bias coming out.
That's what I'm talking about. When you hear it, you don't know. Old,
Yeah.
young, black, white, man,
Yeah.
woman. You don't. It's just a voice, a unique voice.
I definitely am not a proponent of, oh, I'm colorblind, I don't see color, all of. So I'm never about stripping identity. And if we can strip the identity from the music itself, that's a different conversation.
Sure.
To me. It's one thing to talk about the person; it's another thing to talk about the music. Anyway, we can shoot the shit about that forever. But all right, well, yeah, I'm gonna check out some more Jimmy Scott. So.
Little Jimmy Scott.
Little Jimmy Scott. So I'm going to do my best, y'all, to update that Triloquy Tracks playlist. As a matter of fact, today is Monday, Tuesday, tomorrow, I'm going to make it a point to do that. So on Wednesday, we ready, okay? Because I'm several weeks behind on that. But, well, as we transition here into the third movement, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on. So the Norfolk Chamber Music Festival over at the Yale Summer School is having a virtual series where they're doing all of these concerts. Well, an upcoming concert is going down on Friday, July 9th. It's called Music from Troubled Times. It features a string trio for violin, viola, and cello, a piano trio. Both of these coming from the Jewish perspective and, music during the Holocaust and all of, all those horrific things. And then a piece of music, again, by Daniel Bernard Roumain called Twin Stars, Diamond Variations for Dae'Anna. This is a world premiere. All sorts of really incredible musicians here in the third movement today. Joining Daniel Bernard Roumain and myself is Melvin Chen, the pianist who's going to be performing. He and DBR are friends. They've been collaborating on this piece, had lots of conversations So I think it's going to be a really powerful composition, for folks who haven't been with us. We've been talking about DBR a lot. They didn't, there were certain singers who didn't want to sing the lyrics, God damn America. So I'm sure there are going to be some spicy conversation, some spicy things
I
happening
wonder.
here. During the conversation, one of the things we talk about is that the title for this piece of music, "Twin Stars," was actually changed. So I wonder what I should have I should have asked him what the first title was. Maybe it was a spicy title, but in the moment we were talking about really something else. But anyway, DBR has been going through so much, from the internet, social media stuff. That woman who we had to get together a couple weeks ago wrote that article
Sure.
about him and calling him a race baiter. So I just started by asking DBR, look, how are you? Are you okay? Are you keeping things together? And he responds by talking about all that's around us. There's just catastrophe all around us, and that's what was pervasive in his mind, and that's where we got the conversation started. So to get us into the third movement, I wanted to share a DBR performance. I went through all sorts of recordings and went back in the catalog and found one called "Black Man Singing in Echo Mountain," a really beautiful feature of DBR's voice and musicianship to get us into the third movement. So here's a little bit of that. Here's my conversation with Melvin Chen and Daniel Bernard Roumain.
I do feel okay. Where my mind is at this morning is I'm thinking about South Florida, and in the middle of the night, a building came down. I'm thinking about they just discovered a mass grave in Canada full of young Indigenous
Right.
children. I'm thinking about the last moments of young girls, one as young as 9 months old in Alabama, engulfed in a terrible traffic accident that turned into an inferno. So with all of that on my mind right now, I'm also thinking about a young 10-year-old boy that came out of the rubble in South Florida. I'm thinking about my responsibility and my role in life at a time of mass death, when hasn't there been mass death?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about the work, and I'm thinking about people like Melvin Chen, who allows me to create work that speaks to, well, not just death, but life. Actually, speaks to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got me thinking about, I don't know if either of you are watching the show Loki, but there's this theme about hiding.
Oh yes,
and,
I am.
hiding and hiding. Oh, great. Hiding and tragedy. So, that idea of this big catastrophe being a place that's a safe space for certain people, which is a weird thing to think about. I wonder if there's any, I'm so glad that both of you watched that show. I wonder if there's any ideas there, any context there, as far as having to work in the midst of all of these catastrophic things that are happening all around us.
Well, first of all, this is Marvel's first queer character. Is that right?
I think so officially. Yeah, we found that out last
I don't
night.
want. Oh, yeah, I shouldn't be. Sorry.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Sorry. Okay, so let me pull back.
I haven't watched that episode yet.
Oh, sorry. Okay. But this is so funny. We're geeking out right now. I was watching it with my son just last night. Yeah, I think that what I find provocative about the show and the storytelling of it is this notion of time as something almost divine, right? Or something, or maybe another way to look at it is that what we thought might be divine is actually these kind of framers or caretakers of time. I can't remember the three. I can't remember their specific name in the show, but that that what we thought was autonomy in our lives, what we thought was choices that we were making, was actually someone else's plan, and to deviate from it meant that you were, again, I can't remember the name, but I can't remember the name of the deviation from your timeline. Anyway,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, but I guess to think about this in succinctly and in different ways, I'm 50 years old. What I'm thinking about is how precious each day is. And in that, again, as a composer, every commission, every work that I write, every engagement with every performer, for me, particularly as a father, becomes consequential because of time, because I feel that it's a gift. And I don't know, none of us know, right, when our time will come. So in that, I do think that commissions and our choices around them become fixed in time, because as a composer, for me, once I'm gone, in a lot of ways, the only thing that's going to remain will be the music.
Hmm. Melvin, do you feel that sense of urgency, that sense of importance that I think Daniel is speaking to there?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, my wife. I mean, Daniel. I think we're about the same age. I'm 50, 51. I'm 51 actually, and I would say almost every day, my wife and I look at each other and say, like, how do we get so old? And I think
I hear you on that.
the way I think about life is that from the beginning of life to age 30 feels like forever, right? It feels like you'll never get to age 30, right? And after age 30 and on, all you're thinking about is like, how is time going so fast? And so I feel like I'm at the point now where uh, you realize that you have a limited time, and you start thinking about what you need to be doing with that time and how to make best use of it. And so I think the urgency is there. I think especially in the midst of tragedy, as we were talking about, like, it makes the feeling even more urgent, and the need to respond to things that are happening, the need to try to make a difference, I think is what drives us at this point.
Yeah. And that idea of time moving, at the same pace, but seemingly different based on our circumstances, I think is something important to point out when we talk about those who the victims of, police brutality have left behind. I've been thinking a lot, obviously, in preparation for this conversation about Diamond and Dae'Anna, how time must have held still in that moment, how time must be, something crazy for them to think about since, the murder of Philando Castile. Daniel, with so many types of catastrophes surrounding us, why that one? What inspired you to write this piece of music in honor of those two women?
Because I saw it as a particularly okay. So two things here. If you look at it through a racial filter, meaning I'm not even sure what race actually the officer was. His name was Geronimo, I think.
Right, right.
His names are, so I'm not from. He might actually be Latino. I'm not sure, or Latinx, or I'm not sure. Geronimo Yunez, maybe. I'm not sure, but beyond this trope of a black man and a non-black male law enforcement officer, and what I call this kind of lethal intimacy, a lethal pas de deux. Once I got past that, I started realizing this was an American family. They got up together, presumably. They brushed their teeth. They took a shower. They had breakfast. They got in the car. They started driving down the road. Mm-hmm. I did that thousands of times with my mom and dad in the back seat. And, and just talking about time, remember being 4 years old. She's 4 years old. Diana, Dana, 4 years old,
Dana,
in the back seat, and you're looking up at your parents, and they look like gods. And I remember being back there with my blankie, and I used to call it schla. I would suck on a little piece of plastic, and I don't know what it called. Anyways, I had this nervous tick. But I just remember being in the back of my what I call my father's car, dad's car, right? Well, that's the way I remember it. 'Cause my mother actually doesn't drive, but I felt safe back there. That's the thing. I felt safe, and it was an adventure. We were going to go somewhere, whether it was ice cream or church or whatever it was. It was that car and that American road, and seeing the back of my dad's head and my mom, and seeing them talk. And sometimes the best part was I would pretend I was sleeping because I could hear them talking about me and or my sisters.
Mhm.
It was just outside of my crib or my bedroom, I guess. That's where I felt most safe.
You
And
know,
what attracted me to the story was the fact that so many violations, so much trauma happened in those 7 shots.
right. And as you describe the safety you would feel in your dad's back seat, I'm thinking about that little girl and that mother in a different back seat. I came across today that brutal footage of, and I wrote it down, the little girl saying, "Please don't take them off," referring to the handcuffs. "I don't want you to get shooted." And I can barely read that without getting choked up. I mean, that as a father, there has to be so much there that you've poured into this piece of music.
I will just say that it speaks to the divine, heroic, incredible strength of Black women, and in this case, Diamond. the names, that to witness what is the coming death of her partner, 7 shots, 5 entered his body. And I think that's important. He, at point blank range, talk about poor officer training.
Right.
He missed. 2 of them missed, right? But through it all, Diamond has the strength to start documenting. At one point, she's actually calming everybody down, including the murderer, including the officer, including her child in the back seat, including Philando, including us, an online audience. It is one of the most incredible moments of humanity at a time and simultaneous to that, a time of inhumanity. That they did not see him other than a threat. They didn't hear his words, and you're right, that after all of that, and by the way, if you watch the whole thing, Officer Jimenez, I can't remember, I should know his name, sorry, Geronimo, he has to be consoled by another officer. He's freaking out the whole time. He's really a combination of distraught and shocked, and it's a very kind of bizarre reaction, and he still has this loaded gun on her and everybody in the car. But to not have the humanity, to not be humane enough to say, I just did something wrong, and you can see it exhibited in his body, the officer who committed this murder, and to put them in a car, to put them in handcuffs, meaning Diamond, and have her child. I mean, that's what is just so perverse and wrong in all of the training. How is this person a threat? And to not have the notion to immediately console her, the same way, by the way, they were consoling this officer. Oh, you're right. I think that's what drew me to this story. And Melvin and I, we talked for over a year about this. My original approach, and this is important to your question, Garrett, my original approach was to go right after this officer. I think the original title was something along the lines of the murder or the assassination of Philando Castile by the coward officer Geronimo, so on and so forth. I had a lot of rage. I still do. Even in this moment, you've kind of conjured that up. I had a lot of rage. This shows you the importance of words, Mark Bamuti Joseph's libretto quelled and changed and completely changed the music, completely changed the piece.
It's a beautiful libretto, I have to say.
Melvin, what's your, it's one thing to talk about your relationship with the broader issue of police brutality, but what's your relationship with putting or the feelings behind putting this sort of music on a stage for presumably a predominantly white audience? How do you think about the implications, and how do you come to make the decisions that you've made when it came to this collaboration?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I've known Daniel a long time. I know I like him as a person. I like his music. I feel like, my role as the kind of commissioner of the piece is to let Daniel have the freedom to express what he wants to express, right? And I do remember, Daniel, we had a conversation about the title because you had sent me the title, and
Yeah, I'm sorry,
I was
man.
like,
I'm so
let
sorry.
me. I mean, I would say, that's pretty provocative. So I called Daniel and we had a conversation about it, and it was clear, actually, that the title had been thought through. It wasn't just something he just came up with and slapped on the page. Like he had thought through it. There were reasons you, Daniel, there are reasons you came up with it. There are references to other works in it, and so after I had the conversation, I understood what he was coming from, and I wasn't going to change it, right? Like if that's what he wanted to do,
Hmm.
it was fine. It was fine with me because I knew that this was not an impulsive decision. That title, I knew that it was considered, that it was thoughtful, and if people didn't like it, that's fine. That was fine with me, and so we had a conversation about it, and I knew where he was coming from, and I said fine, and then the pandemic hit because this was in 2019. This was actually
Hmm.
before George Floyd, before any of this was happened, right? And it was going to be premiered in the summer of 2020, and the pandemic hit, and we had to cancel the thing, and so I would say this piece has had a longer gestation period than we had hoped for. But now having seen the piece, like it's gonna be great. And so I don't know what happened in between where we had the discussion about the title and what it is now, but I was happy either way.
Would it have been a different piece, Daniel, if that 2020 premiere did happen? Let's pretend that George Floyd did not die and there was no COVID. Have there been other evolutions of this piece of music, considering the unforeseen catastrophes that were ahead of you, ahead of us all?
In a word, yes, it would have been an entirely different piece. And I really want to credit Melvin and Yale and the Norfolk Chamber Festival with being patient, supportive, loving during what was a difficult time. I mean, Melvin, you're reminding me. Melvin and I, we talked sometimes multiple times in a week
Hmm.
during the height of the pandemic. We went through what happened with George Floyd. We went through what happened with Breonna Taylor. We went through this incident with Philando Castile and his family. So we talked a lot at length, sometimes with students, sometimes with Alpha Dworkin from the
Hmm.
Spinks competition. But Melvin and I, text messages, we became very, very closer during a time where there was so much fear and so much uncertainty. And, as a composer being commissioned by a prestigious festival that has its own history and its own desire and aspirations towards change and diversity, equity, and inclusion, I can't say enough how comforting it was to have such a strong, in some ways, emotional partner
Hmm.
through a piece that kind of had to change, in a way. And I'll say this, Garrett. I mean, this thinking about, I can read a little bit at a certain point from the libretto, but
Sure.
just thinking about the program notes. So this happened on July 6, 2016,
Hmm.
right? I've always felt that all musical scores, are a type of cultural documentation, right? And I know you understand that. For our listeners who don't know, and you should, Garrett is a brilliant musician, an incredible musician incredible professional musician who has worked with so many composers and in so many orchestras and ensembles worldwide. So I know that when you're looking at a part and when you're a part of a larger orchestral score, you're kind of playing through in a real way, a kind of living history,
Hmm.
right? You're playing the same notes that somebody played sometimes, 100, 200, 300 years before you did. So that's why it's so important, I think, for me as a Black composer to create works that even in the title, even in the program notes, even in the notes, speak to what happened so that we don't forget, so that we can try to evolve, and most importantly to me, so that we can honor. Dae'Anna, this little 4-year-old girl now is 9, perhaps
Hmm.
10 years old.
Hmm.
And as the libretto does, And I'm thinking about that 10-year-old boy that was pulled from the rubble this morning. In so many ways, sorry, let me just be real cool right now. I do think about my child. I do think about children. I do think about children who are faced looking at or have deep fear, deep trauma. Who is whispering in their ear?
Mm-hmm.
Who is giving them comfort? Whether or not you believe in the divine, I think that's what Mark did in this libretto, and that's what I tried to do in the piece. The piece roars at time and rocks, but it begins in whisper. And so much of this is about, also, it's very important, Melvin's playing. I really wrote the piano part for Melvin and for his playing, all of it. The tenacity and virtuosity, but the tenderness too.
The intimacy, the relationship between the two of you is sort of a recurring theme, and I know it plays a huge role in this piece of music. I wonder, and I'll throw this at you, Melvin. I wonder how that intimacy, that vulnerability can come through to the audience. It's we're gonna, those of us in the circle, certainly the two of you, are gonna love it no matter what. How are you planning to get that intimacy, that power, all of those emotions to, again, this predominantly white audience, an audience that might not have the relationship with the issue at hand that Daniel has?
I mean, I don't think I need to do anything, right? I need to just play the music, and I think the music will speak for itself. I don't think it matters that this is a black composer. If a white person's listening to it, I think the music is powerful enough that it will move the audience. So I think that's what music does. Of any culture, great music will move whoever's listening to it. So I don't feel like I need to do anything special, whether it's a white audience or a black audience. We just, like, my responsibility is to give the best performance that I can of the piece. And I'm sure the music will speak for itself. I don't, I'm not worried about that.
Sure. And the only reason that I, bring up identity when it comes to audience is because I think this is, a story, how can I say, a response to a story that so many people need to hear, but the people that I want to hear it just aren't in those spaces. It's something that I can't shake. It's something that I don't not think about.
No, I think that's a very important point, actually. And I think that, part of what we want to do, I mean, this is a huge question, right? I mean, so we could talk hours about this, but I think part of marketing this piece, whether it's at Norfolk or whether we're doing it somewhere else, is that we need to find a different kind of audience than normally listens to classical music, because this piece will speak to them, right? And it's my opinion that, like, classical music will speak to them too, right? But there's so much kind of baggage surrounding it at this point that we need to break down those barriers first. I will say that Daniel's premiere, I've paired it. The program I've called is like Music from Troubled Times, right? And I've paired it with a string trio of Gideon Klein, who wrote this trio while we use in a concentration camp, and with the Shostakovich piano trio, which also has references to the Holocaust, right? So to place Daniel's work, I think, in context is important, right? I think it's not right to just have Daniel's work alone aside, by itself somewhere else. I think it's important to place it within the tradition, within the lineage of classical music, because that's where it belongs, and also to kind of have the audience think about, what is the kind of music that can arise from oppression. Like, what are different people's response to that? And Daniel's will be placed in conversation with these other pieces that also have been written under, oppressive circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, Daniel, I know that your music has been in conversation, as Melvin says, with many of the composers of the past. Do you ever think about what it might be like to be in verbal conversation with these composers and compare, maybe I shouldn't use the word compare, but to share their stories next to your story, next to our story?
Sure. I mean, sometimes I give a very arrogant answer to be honest. Sometimes I've said Beethoven's dead, but I'm alive. All right. So take that as you want. Beethoven's dead, y'all. You cannot talk to him, but I am alive. I know we love to say that, that's something Bach, speaks to me. And actually, he doesn't. He's dead. I can speak to you, though. I know the music might move you in a certain way, but I can actually speak to you. In fact, I know many, many Black composers. I know many composers. Okay. But that said, no, I get it. And you know what? To be humbled in this moment, I'm thinking about my work at the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, where I do have a curatorial role. And it's heavy in classical music because I'm now, you got to be careful what you wish for or you protest against in a way, because now I'm in a position where I have to work within an organization with other musicians, with an audience that has specific needs and wants. Part of that is tradition, part of that is innovation, part of that is the past, part of that is the now. Can you speak to both of those things? I think you can. I've tried to do that in the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, and quite frankly, I've tried to do that in this piece. In just a minute, let me geek out a little bit since we're kind of geeky today.
Sure,
and talk about the first 6 chords of this piece. I can kind of describe it to you, and I'm not giving anything away, but the piece is constructed on 2 arias and then 2 variations on those arias. I'm echoing in one of them the Goldberg variations, the aria from the Goldberg variations. But in the very first aria, I was actually thinking about kind of almost country music in a way. Maybe Ray Charles' take on country music. The first chord is a D major chord. The next chord is a 5 of 4. And some of you, for your audience, some of this might not mean anything, but imagine a D major chord, and then the next thing is a C natural in that chord, and it wants to move somewhere. And what I just described is so typical of country music, gospel music, laid back soul music. The next chord after that is a 4 chord, 5 of 4. Sorry. The next chord after that is a 4 chord, then a minor 4 chord, then a minor 2 chord. Then a minor 5. That was I'm not going to do the major 5. Okay, so the first 6 things that happen here is very soft, and the strings it's just the strings and Melvin, and they're doing straight up tertian, nothing complicated or, that kind of modernistic music that some of your listeners might have in their heads. No, if you didn't know any better, this might be the beginning of a piece by Patsy Cline. Written by Willie Nelson. It starts off as cool and as almost like a summer breeze, maybe 6:46 at night, maybe 8, 9 o'clock. We had a strawberry moon last night, because the title of the piece is Twin Stars. And Mark talks about, with that little bit of a geek out, let me just say the first line of the piece. What follows next after the strings? Well, let me take a step back, Garrett, and just say that I do think Mozart's music all of it is about opera. All of it is about the introduction of characters. Yeah. I always think about that, right? I don't know who said that quote, but I love that. So I'm introducing the band together. And then the singer comes in, and the first thing they say is actually the last part of the libretto. I'm going first. It's all about the celestial, the cycle. And the first thing the singer says after that, those 6 measures, is justice running on twin tracks, parallel lives. On one, her American father exercises his rights and shouts a glance at the stars in June. Says, look, little girl, the stars are in Gemini. We're just like them. Black matter, light, shining. It's a miracle, isn't it, little girl? We've been here before. We've been here before. Before. Here. Before. I mean, that's Mark, man.
It's beautiful.
And just to vet that out a little bit, he's talking about we as a country have been here before. The trope of the black man being shot. But he's also talking about, look, little girl, look up at the stars. We've been here before. Black matter, Carl Sagan, right? Dust. And I'm with you. I'm right here with you. Man, Garrett, this podcast is supposed to be cool. You're gonna make me cry, brother. Let me just stop for a second. Let me just stop. Oh man.
Those are beautifully moving words. Well, Melvin, let me ask you this. We have, again, a mix of the so-called tradition. I hate to say traditional classical music. I don't like that, but for the sake of this conversation, we have the comparisons that we can make and the context that we can put around the music theory and the chord structure. We have the emotions of the libretto, and of course how it will be beautifully performed. This is one moment, and I know everyone's going to leave the concert and feel like they've really done something or they've really engaged something, but for you, what's the bigger picture? Giving space to this piece of music is a means towards what?
Well, I think that everyone, I think first of all, I think we all got into classical music because we love the music, right? I think there's no question about that. I think that what all of us have to wrestle with now is the fact that whatever you call the tradition of classical music is primarily dead white European men, right? You can't, there's no disputing that, right? And the question is, how can you move forward in a way with that legacy, understanding that that's what the legacy is, and also understanding that that's not what the world is. So I think Daniel's piece is of course part of a larger project. I would say that we need to embark on, so that we're not stuck in this dead white European male tradition, right? Right. That may be the past, but that should not be the future. And I think Daniel's piece is one step in that direction. I think the rest of the programming for the summer, I've tried to kind of expand the boundaries of what it is. I think first of all, with classical music, there's the problem, right? Whether it's said explicitly or not, and it has been said explicitly that whatever you call classical music is like the best form of music, right? I mean that's like that's what people say, and so I think part of it is just for classical musicians to take a step back and recognize, look, there's like a whole universe of great music. Classical music is like one star in that spectrum, right? And so we need to recognize that there are many types of other great musics from other cultures all around the world, and that we belong in that rainbow of great music. The other thing we have to recognize is that because we come from a legacy of white European males, we have to try harder so that going forward, that is not the case, right? And that means you have to find examples of, well, there are different things. One is that you have to be conscious of what we consider the great composers of the past. We have to be conscious of why they were great and what other talented musicians, whether they're musicians of color, women, the ways in which they were excluded, right? And so moving forward, what I want to do with my programming is to recognize that we need to move forward in a different way than we have. Which is not to say we shouldn't. I don't think we should throw away the music we love, right? But we need to place it in a more self-conscious context to understand what are the reasons they became great and what are the reasons that other people were not afforded those same opportunities. So for example, in the programming, there's in a different program, I'm doing an all French program, right? And the last piece on the program is a very famous piece by Fauré, a piano quartet. Most people know that, everyone likes that, but to show like the kind of French music that people may not have known, right? I'm starting with a quartet by Joseph Bellone, and then going to a piano trio by Germaine Taillefer,
right?
She's a women, so I think like those kinds of things, like to place people who have, that people don't think of, but but need to be in there to place them again, like in the same way I'm doing with Daniel's piece, in conversation with the pieces that we know. I think basically I look at it as in a positive way, right? Like it would be better if there were more music that we could love, right? And there's a lot of music for whatever reason that's really good that we don't know, right? And it's not my job to say to the audience, this is great music that you should think is great. My job, I feel, is to bring these composers, like Daniel, like Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, who actually visited Norfolk in 1906 and had a premiere done there, to present that music, to say that it's music that needs to be heard, right? And then to let people decide, is this music I want to hear again?
This is my challenge with that, Daniel. I feel like our music is always accompanied. We have to be in that space with the foray, with the Thai affair. I mean, and I think you touched on this a little bit when you were talking about your collaborations in New Jersey. I mean, how do you traverse that? Really steering the ship, but I don't know, responding to folks like me who say the ship isn't being steered drastically enough.
Well, okay. Yes. So maybe another way to look at it is, where are the moments in society, in culture, where Black people and white people come together? Sorry, that's Zachary down there. There you go. Just life. He's on. He's doing his
great
baseball game online. Whatever it is. Okay, but so because I think that's important, because I think that there aren't many, and at least in my experience, there are not that many places where that happens. I mean, I think about places of religion. Mm-hmm. I do think about commercial outdoor concerts, but even Bob Marley struggled, right?
Sure.
We know Bob Marley struggled, and Prince struggled to find and cultivate a Black audience, or a BIPOC audience, as we might say. So there aren't that many places, quite frankly, at least in my experience, where BIPOC people, I should say, and non-BIPOC people, or maybe another way to look at it, where are the places where race doesn't matter, and we come together and we celebrate? Where are those places? I know that when again, just going full circle, whenever tragedy comes, it seems that that's a place where there can be a rally, right? So when we look at it that way, that's one reason why we have to kind of mitigate and manage, you're right, the kind of cultural contextualization of our work. Mm-hmm. Quite frankly, most classical concerts, most classical experiences I have had, I am one of few Black people in the hall, mm-hmm. whether it's as a soloist, as a conductor, as a composer, or as an audience member. Right. I often say, for me, playing my voodoo violin concerto is in some ways, some of the most wonderful and painful moments of my life. I'm surrounded by people who don't look like me. And again, for our audience, I used to look much more like you, Garrett. I don't like to talk about it, but, because I don't want to talk about glory days or something. But I looked different. And by that, I mean my hair and my piercings and everything about me was in some ways antithetical to the perception of the staid European, or the staid composer, however you want to say it. So to be on stage, with long hair, playing voodoo violin concerto with an amplified 7-string instrument was very difficult, because behind me was pretty much a monolithically white orchestra, and in front of me was pretty much a monolithically white audience. But I also understand the privilege in a very real way of that position. Now, I'm old enough now, I am 50 years old, to understand my role and responsibility and all that, to understand other people's roles and responsibilities and all that. And I know that we're trying, just as you were saying before, Garrett, and speaking to Melvin's role and responsibility to this the Norfolk Chamber Music Festival, is that we're trying to build a new audience for not only new music, but I think new ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
And look, we can make it real simple. I don't think in the canon anywhere, and I could be wrong. I hope I am. This is audacious to say. I don't think there's any piece right now that is speaking to or honoring what happened to Philando Castile. It may be the only one. And that's not a boast. That's just where we are right now.
Right. Before I let Daniel have the last word, Melvin, how can folks learn more about this concert in particular and the entire series?
Well, this summer, unfortunately, we're not having our performances in person with an in-person audience, but we are streaming all the concerts and for no charge. And so anyone who wants to see any of the concerts can go to norfolkmusic.org, and the stream will be up on there. It'll be up on YouTube, but norfolkmusic.org will have all the information on Daniel's piece as well as the rest of the summer.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to, round everything out, coming back full circle. Daniel, you're beginning, listing off all of these catastrophes. The people are hurting. We are all hurting. We are not okay. Even beyond the physical, mental health is a bigger conversation than it's ever been, at least in my memory. Can you offer some words to us, to the person trying to press through? Maybe they can't press through with music because they're not composers. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's writing, whatever. What are your words to, pressing through, using our talents to get through this time that's been so catastrophic for so many of us?
Well, I'll say two things, and thank you for your work. Thank you for allowing this very important platform to happen. These podcasts are part of the antidote to the ills of the world, I would say. Your voice and the love behind it, your commitment and vision towards our communities, all of our communities, is really important. And Melvin, I say the same thing to you. You're an educator and a father and a leader and a musician and I would say a cultural carekeeper. So we're not first responders, but I would like to think we're second or third or fourth, right? So the first thing I'll say is that I want to I'll talk from the program notes. I tried to express the shock and horror and sadness, but also that warm spiritual embrace when, as a parent, all you ever want to do is comfort your child. I would like to think that even in those spaces of death, as Philando's soul was leaving his body, he found a way to his family, to his daughter, and whispered into her ear, "It's a miracle, isn't it, little girl? We've been here before, around in circles. Look, little girl, the stars are in Gemini, and we're just like them. I'm right here with you. I'm right here with you." I hope you find something in the moment and in this music to keep you safe and starry-eyed, looking up at the moon and stars. So those are the program notes, and I think they speak to this moment where you wake up and you realize in the middle of the night, last night, somewhere in South Florida, the walls came down. And somehow, in all of that death, a 10-year-old little boy cried out and was comforted and pulled from the wreckage on the back of a first responder. And, I have to believe that beyond trauma, beyond horror, there are those moments like a concert that are not trivial. They bind us together. They bring us together. We look at the screen and then we look up at the stars, sometimes at a strawberry moon, and it's what keeps us human. I think we have gone through a kind of cultural hibernation. And now we're coming back into something where we need to maybe redefine excellence, redefine culture, and recommit to those ideas that are so foundational and so fundamental to who we all are as one another. And this sounds very starry-eyed and I'm not a Pollyanna looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. Rather, the glasses are off. And I'm aspiring in my work and in myself to something beyond the body, And where does race happen when, the soul is all that remains. That's where I'm trying to be, believe it or not. And I do feel that the role and responsibility of the living artist right now is to speak to joy, honor those that we have lost, and to move together hand in hand, even with people who don't want to touch you or see you or hear you. And if we can all do that, well, then we will rise, maybe into the stars. Looking up, looking up, looking up. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I said that on purpose. Just like Scott Joplin, Curtis Mayfield, and Isaac Hayes, and Bill T. Jones.
You see how DBR is just not limited when it comes to musical perspective, to shout outs. He used to have hair similar to mine, not anymore.
Indeed.
You know, time happens, but
Yes, it
you know,
does.
all forms of us are beautiful. The first time I met, and I you know use that word in air quotes because I was just hearing him speak, was at a Sphinx conference. So again, you know, shout out to Sphinx. A lot of stuff happens at that conference. DBR one year was like a keynote interviewee with Aaron Dworkin, and that's when I learned about his collaborations with Lady Gaga. When I was on the radio at NPR, one of my one of my favorite things to put in the middle of the night, DBR recorded an arrangement of, what is that piece of music by Philip Glass? Metamorphosis 1 for a piano and violin, DBR playing violin, you know, just a really serene, I encourage everybody to go look for that. DBR is the real deal, and I'm rooting for him. I'm really rooting for him. So shout out to him and congratulations to Melvin Chen and everyone else over at the Norfolk Chamber Music Festival. I want to thank Janet for making the connection and getting the interview together. I'm going to check out the performance on July 9th. I'll have a link to more of that information in the description of this. Before we get into the triloquy, Scott, one of the things that, again, Daniel, Melvin, and I were talking about was all of the catastrophe that surround us. We sort of connected it to Loki, which, you know, many of us are watching these days, the way hiding in catastrophe works there. I was wondering about the idea of finding opportunity or growth in catastrophe. I think about myself, you know, losing my job last year. On the surface, to a lot of people, you know, may have seemed like a catastrophe, and I can understand that. But my resume is so much more diverse now, and there are just many ways in which that sort of catastrophe has been one that I can grow something out of, and focus on different things, and continue to sustain myself, you know, without a boss. I don't suspect that I will be jobless forever, but that sort of catastrophe, that event that seemed like a catastrophe, ended up something different. So I wonder if you had any ideas on, you know, hiding in catastrophe or finding opportunity or growth in just what can seem like the most horrible of situations.
Maybe I should change my thinking to opportunity or living in catastrophe, because I have become so self-reliant over the last 15 years that when catastrophe happens, there typically is no one else around to help. Sure. I have gotten into a spot where tragedy, catastrophe happens, and I go, well, let's suit up. Now we have to get through this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I need to work on my trust. Maybe I have trust issues.
You have been watching Loki, haven't you?
I have.
What you think? You're the comic book person from back when.
I'm really interested in where they will put this in the timeline. Because they say that the TVA time moves differently. So all of this could be going, you know, kind of, and Rick and Morty, one of the writers on Rick and Morty is working on Loki.
Oh, I see.
Waldrop, I think is his last name. And I I'm curious how they're going to place this, because maybe all of this stuff is happening, wicked fast, but they already said that he couldn't get back into the timeline. So I don't know. I don't know what direction they're going to go with it.
Every time they say TVA, I think about Tennessee Valley Authority. That's what's in
Right.
my mind.
I heard some guy giving it a review, and he said it's not the Tennessee Valley Authority like you want to think. Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the things that DBR mentioned in the interview that I was so glad to hear, it was affirming for me to hear someone else say it. DBR talked about Mozart and talked about how when you think about music by Mozart, it's all opera, even if it's not opera.
Right. Right.
The middle movement of the piece of music that we all hate to love and love to hate, the bassoon concerto, the melody for the middle movement and the bassoon solo part is an aria, actually. I forget the other opera it's in, but that was really cool. So in that spirit, I found a trill in the Mozart bassoon concerto to get us into our fourth movement.
Hit
here.
me.
Frank Morelli playing bassoon there, my sort of grand teacher. He was Lacolian's teacher, so
I didn't know you could have that. Cool.
I'm enjoying thinking about finding trills in the repertoire. It's been an impetus for me to go back into the Western classical repertoire because I've been kind of rejecting it here for a few months for my own self. Mm-hmm. But it's good to get back into it. I'm just not going to center it. That's the problem. We center that, but that's not what we're here to talk about this week in the Triloquy. All right, here's my first thing. I'm going to do two quick things and we're done. The world is open, and so is racism. Listen, Dell and I have, in the past couple weeks, been trying to make an effort to not be hermits and go out. So we've probably been to about 10, 12 bars at this point. And at a few of them, every time I cut on some rap music, every time I turn on some hip hop on these virtual jukeboxes and things, you have bartenders, you have folks that work there. I'm not talking about just customers or whatever. I'm talking about folks that work there, either scrubbing the systems of this music or making faces or assuring other white patrons that, okay, it's okay. This won't last too long. Just take your mind somewhere else, like they're being abused or something. And after being indoors for so long, this stuff is more profound to me. I see it so much more. I don't know if there if there are, little problematic things that you've seen in your comings and goings just since the world is open. But I just want to quickly say, I want to affirm all of the folks that see these things and challenge you to say something about it. Just like we were talking about Pinka Zuckerman earlier. If you are in a public space, it is your job to intervene. And I know some people will say, well, I'm not here for that. I'm here for a drink. I'm here for dinner. I don't know. That's how this stuff gets perpetuated. So that's my first little thing.
If a person doesn't like hip hop, that doesn't make them racist out of hand?
No, but we all know the language. We all know the dog whistle language that surrounds this music. Again, I'm trying not to say that word, that N word, but we feel that, and I hate to be gaslit into thinking that racism is not a thing when we've experienced that. Is if you don't like a song, then it just passes by, and it's not like we're dealing with eye rolls or whatever. We were somewhere, and Dell heard it. I didn't hear it, and some Drake came on, and the bartender told somebody else at the bar, well, sometimes we listen to this type of music in a way that was, it'll be over soon. Don't worry. We'll get back to the white classics soon. I understand that not liking hip hop doesn't mean you're racist, but I know the internalized, slick racism when I see it, especially, again, like I said, after being in the house for so long, coming outside, it's apparent to me. It's apparent to me. So that's I
wasn't trying to challenge you. I was just saying that, I don't like all rap music.
Sure. I don't like all rap music. I don't think anybody does. But my point is that we have to more actively recognize these little microaggressions that we're alleging aren't big deals, but are to
Okay,
some people.
I was just curious. I was just
That's all I'm saying. And maybe if I'm going over your head, I'm not talking to you, but we have to, I'm not saying look for the racist moment as you're going out and trying to have a good time. But when you see something, you have to acknowledge it. You have to say something. You have to put that person in the hot seat for a second so they don't feel comfortable doing that next time or saying that next time. That offhanded comment. Pinka Zuckerman obviously felt like he didn't do nothing wrong in the moment when he was talking about put some soy sauce on it. Somebody should have got him together right there in that moment. I don't know that they didn't, but he won't do it again, at least not comfortably after this so-called apology and the public outcry and
maybe
and X, Y, and Z. So there's that. Okay. My second and final triloquy, I believe. All of these mass graves of these children that they're finding up in Canada. I went on Google and I searched Canadian churches burned. This comes from independent.co.uk. 2 more Catholic churches have been burnt down within Indigenous communities in West Canada on Saturday. The 2 British Columbia churches, St. Anne's Church and Chapaka Church, were completely destroyed by fires which started within an hour of each other. Officers are calling this suspicious. So what's happening is that, the stories I'm hearing is that we're finding all of these bodies of hundreds of bodies of Indigenous children buried, exterminated. We're discovering this, and the Indigenous people and other people in these communities are not having it, and they are responding to this. Go ahead.
What did they call these residential schools?
Yeah.
What are they? Is that what they're called?
Which really it was re-education centers. There were places in which these Indigenous children learned how to be white. Okay, some people will say learn how to be Western or whatever, but at the end of the day, they were teaching them how to be white. And for the ones that weren't lucky, they were just straight up killed and buried and put in these mass graves. Scott, we really have to start talking about what the future is going to look like when we seriously have the conversation of Indigenous autonomy, Indigenous equity, and reclamation of land. I know a lot of us are practicing land acknowledgments when we do different presentations and all of that sort of thing. This is my question. Let me get my soundboard. This is my question. We can say, I'm sitting in the ancestral land, for example, here, Wapakudi Sioux of the Eastern Dakota. I can say that. Homeowners, business owners around here can say that. What are we going to do? What are y'all going to do when Wapakudi Sioux, Eastern Dakota people come knocking on your door and say, you're on my land, you have to go? Okay? And I know that sounds scary or weird or maybe radical or exaggerated to a lot of people. But seriously, I think we need to think about, at least entertain the conversation of what that would mean. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about equity, okay, that would be a huge step to give land back, to give them the rights that they had before all of this other stuff. Now, we can always say, well, I can just hear it in people. Well, I didn't kick anybody off their land, or I didn't participate in any racial extinction and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if this is their land. And if we are practicing these land acknowledgments and acknowledging that this belongs to them, what is it going to mean when one of us has to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak? That's something I've been thinking about when it comes to these stories. I'm not upset at these churches burning. I'm not upset at these churches burning. Anyone upset at these churches burning needs to understand that there were children, hundreds of children, who were just taken away purposefully by the government. Dell and I were talking earlier about articles that said Adolf Hitler used many of his techniques based on what he learned from Abraham Lincoln. America has been the example, has been the whole just this thing. And this conversation is one that I think is coming more and more and more into the forefront. What are they going to do when they start to find these mass graves in places in the United States? What role does law enforcement have in this conversation? They will likely be on the wrong side of the conversation, but I think it's a conversation we need to begin to acknowledge, if I'm going to use that word again, because it means something. Stating these land acknowledgments, it means something. And if you don't mean it, I encourage you not to do it, because I mean it. I mean it for real. When we talk about justice, when we talk about liberation, it's things that we really, really, really have to consider and think about. Do you have an opinion or thoughts on that subject? First of all, have you heard about this story of these mass graves that have been discovered?
Yes, it's been in the news the last several days, pretty prominent. And I would like to find out more about Hitler cribbing notes from Lincoln.
Sure. Maybe that's one of those dubious factual claims. But we were
no, you got to show me.
But we were talking about it. We were talking about it earlier. What you gonna do when an Indigenous person comes knocking on your door?
Look out through the mail slot.
Look, all I'm saying is it's a conversation. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying everybody necessarily needs to abandon their homes and give their land back to the people that it belongs to. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying we have to begin to consider the conversation, especially if we're going to do the performative work of land acknowledgments when we're making presentations or in meetings or whatever. Before we go, Scott, and we did not talk about this earlier, I need everybody listening, I need you to send warm thoughts, prayers to my family. My niece, my brother's daughter, has been dealing with cancer since she was born. Okay, a little over 2 years old. Today, the doctors said that she has a 0% chance of survival.
Oh no!
So we potentially have a baby's funeral on our hand. I have actually never met Elise in real life because of COVID and all that thing. All those things. I'm going to try my best, make every priority to get down there. What I'm thinking about, and I'm bringing it up here because she does not have an opportunity. She does not have an opportunity to do anything to try to make the world better. I can't imagine the heartache that my brother Brandon must be dealing with. My parents, losing their granddaughter, my grandparents losing their great-granddaughter. They say that there's no larger hurt and harm than that. I think about the opportunities that she has not been given and that she will never be given. And I think about the opportunities that we have been given. Okay. We weren't diagnosed with cancer when we were 1 year old and given a 0% survival rate by a doctor before we can talk and verbalize. We have been given the opportunity to live. And we have to do something with that. That's why I'm so spirited and so passionate about the work I do. It's why I'm so unapologetic. It's why I don't really care about rules and those sorts of structures and in certain aspects, because I feel like we have a responsibility. We've been given a chance to do something. Each and every one of us is a part of an ecosystem that can be better, that can be elevated. And if we aren't doing that, we're wasting our time, we're wasting our life, because so many people have not been given the opportunity. I need to continue to, work my way through all of the emotions and what it really means. But that's what's at the forefront for real of my mind right now. So again, I hope everyone will just send, prayers if that's something you do, warm thoughts, because we desperately need it. This is a very, very, very rough time. On the topic, in closing, on the topic of taking every responsibility, I'm gonna read a quote that was published by the Black Opera Alliance, and this is a quote from Ibram X. Kendi. He says, "One either allows racial inequities to persevere as racist or confronts racial inequities as an anti-racist. There is no in-between safe space of not racist. I'm going to read that sentence again. There is no in-between safe space of not racist. The claim of not racist neutrality is a mask for racism. The claim of not racist neutrality is a mask for racism. We are all here. We have all been given the opportunity to live, to breathe, and to change the world. It's not only an opportunity, it's a responsibility. I hope you'll think about that as you think about me and my family, and we will see you next week.